My race car won't stop crashing. It's stupid. Do you have a small child or maybe several small children and you're thinking about getting a slot car set for Christmas? Then I have some advice for you. Now that advice is assuming that you're going with a larger slot car set such as a 24 scale or 32nd scale. If you're going to go with HO, for example, then the information I present might not help you out a lot, but it might be worth sticking around anyway. Now, some of the information that I'll present is specific to one brand, Carrera. However, most of the information is going to apply to other slot car brands as well, like Scalextric, for example, both digital and analog. Now, the purpose of this video is the fact that we're dealing with little kids here, and sometimes they can be unpredictable and irrational and so forth. And what we want is to have a no tears slot car Christmas, and a couple of areas that we want to address. That would be safety first and foremost, and then also not making them wait too long, and also you don't want them to get frustrated either because they can't catch on to something real quick, and we can address all of those things. Now, one thing before we get to those areas, however, if you haven't gotten your slot car set yet and you're going to go with Carrera, then I would consider trying to get a set that's got identical cars, meaning it's going to have 2 Ferrari 488s, for example, or 2 NASCARs. Now, Carrera does package race sets that have 2 different cars. Now, at least with Carrera anyway, and I can't speak with others, different makes and models can drive differently. Now, they're both going to be pretty close. However, it is possible that if you have multiple children, they both or all might take a liking to the way one car works or handles better. And now you have arguments about who gets to drive the the good car, even though they're all going to be pretty good. So if you have the same car, you won't have that problem. Now, if they're going to argue about who gets what color, well, I can't help you with that. Now, having 2 of the same cars is not as critical as some of the other things I'm going to talk about. However, let's say that you have a third child and you want to buy, a third car for them, and the set comes with a GT3 series, like a C7 here, and maybe a McLaren, and then you want to get the third car. Don't get something that's way different, like a classic NASCAR, for example. Something like this is not going to keep up with these 2 cars. And so if you find yourself in that situation and you're not really sure what to get or what's going to be compatible, leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll be able to help out with recommendations. And the other thing about buying a set is I would recommend getting one that includes the wireless controllers. Now, the big advantage of the wireless controllers is that the freedom of movement, you can drive from anywhere on the track. However, we're talking about dealing with little kids here, and the big thing about the little kids is they can get excited. And if they're using a wired controller and they have a D slot and then they get excited and they go to get the car, they might forget that they're holding on to a controller that's tethered to the track. You could do damage, especially too, if it's set up on the floor and you've got the controllers. It's now a trip hazard. Kids don't always really watch where they're going. Hell, I never watch where I'm going, and they can trip over that, damage the controller, damage the track, damage the kid, especially if the kid's been drinking. So when it comes to the wireless controllers, for the little kids, it's more of a safety thing than anything. And speaking of safety, one thing that you're going to want to instill in the kids is that nobody reslots a car until everybody else on the track has stopped driving. Remember, we're talking about a 32nd scale or 24 scale cars. They're much bigger and much heavier than an HO scale car that, say, maybe that's what you grew up running. And they can injure an adult, and therefore they can definitely injure a child if they're reslotting a car and if someone runs into them. And the chances of that happening are even greater, say, with a digital set where you can run more than one car in the same lane at the same time. And if there's an incident, then you not only got the kid that's injured and crying, and now he's blaming his little sister because maybe she's the one that ran into him in the first place. And again, we want to have a no tears slot car Christmas. So be careful out there. And that brings us to the next topic, and that is, patience is something that's learned, and little kids really haven't learned it yet. And you don't want them to be waiting longer than they have to play with their new racetrack. Now, these large-scale slot car sets are more involved and they will take longer to assemble than, say, again, maybe an HO scale set that you grew up racing. And so having some knowledge or experience beforehand will definitely be a time saver. For example, the Carrera 24 scale sets, those come with the shoulders. Some people call them borders. I don't call them borders. I mean, after all, if you're sitting at a stoplight and take a swig of your beer and then you notice there's a cop sitting next to you, what does he say? He doesn't say pull over under the border. He says pull over to the shoulder, right? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point is, you get this turn, for example, you put that together and then you try to put the shoulders on and realize you can't do that after the turn is assembled. Now you have to disassemble it and now you're wasting time. Meanwhile, the kids are sitting there being as patient as they can. However, they're waiting longer than they have to because daddy doesn't have his shit together. And that's just one example of something that you can prepare and be ready for ahead of time. And especially if you've got a digital set, there's some other things like coding cars to controllers that you might want to learn ahead of time as well. And therefore, I actually recommend that you would take the whole track set a couple of days before Christmas over, say, to a friend's house or maybe to your parents' house or something and actually set the entire thing up. And now you're familiar with the assembly of the track, and you could also take care of some things like coding cars to controllers and stuff beforehand. You don't have to learn how to do that, the day of. And now that brings me to the next thing about the little kids is that they can get frustrated easily when they can't figure something out right away, especially if they have an older sibling who does, and the other kid can't figure out how to keep their car on the track, for example. Now, there's a couple of things that we can do to mitigate that. Now, the first couple times they crash the cars, they might think it's funny, but after a while, they're going to get annoyed that they can't get around the track one time without putting the car back on 3 or 4 times. And so one of the things, now this is with Carrera, other brands I can't say for sure, but with the Carrera cars brand new out of the box, sometimes the tires might not be trued very well. They might be cupped a little bit on the profile or crowned. Either way, you've got a real small contact patch, and it's going to make the car difficult to drive. It's going to be really slippery. It's going to come off the turns real easily. And so doing a quick tune of the tires would be recommended. Check out our video. There's a link in the description on how to do that. You don't even need any special tools or equipment except for a piece of sandpaper, and that can make a huge difference. And again, we don't want the car to be more difficult to drive than it has to be. So that's one way that you can help out the kids to make sure that they're not getting frustrated. Another thing you can do to help keep the car on the track is to limit the top speed. With the digital, you can do that programmatically and set the speed of the car anywhere between 10% and 100% of the maximum speed. And then as the kids get a little more used to it and a better feel for it, then you can just up the speed that way. Now with analog track, you can't do that programmatically or electronically unless you'd have a variable power supply, and you probably don't. However, I designed these clips that can be 3D printed and go onto the stem of the plunger of the analog controller, and that will limit the movement, and that way the car doesn't go too fast. And then of course, as the kids get a little bit more proficient, then you can remove some of these spacers and gradually increase the speed of the car. And so if you're interested, I'll make those STL files available. If you have access to a 3D printer, check the description on where to find those. And therefore, being able to run the cars around the track and set the speed that you think is going to be appropriate for your kids is another benefit to having it set up early at a remote location, not to mention that you've got the cars tuned up and also you're familiar with the assembly somewhat. So now you can pack everything back up in the box, take it back home, put it under the tree. Now you might say, hey, I don't have to do all this stuff. I'm just going to set it up the night before after the kids go to bed. Then it'll be ready when they get up in the morning, and I'll have plenty of time and I can learn all this stuff as I go along. Okay, fine. Consider this scenario. You don't put the kids to bed till, let's say 9 o'clock, right? And then you can't start working on this right away because, of course, in 10 minutes, they're going to get up and want to drink of water. So you're going to wait till like 10 o'clock so you know that they're for sure asleep, right? But it's Christmas Eve and you're like, well, I'm going to have myself an eggnog while I'm waiting, the kind that you make with lighter fluid. And then, so at 10 o'clock, by the time you start, you're on your second eggnog, and then you make a mistake somewhere like the one I mentioned before, and you're like, oh crap, nap, right? So what do? Well, you get yourself another drink, and then later on you get to a point where you need to start reading the instructions here, and they're so small you can't read anything, and then you can't find your readers, of course, and then so while you're looking for your readers, you make yourself another eggnog. Of course, that one's stronger than the one before, and well, one thing leads to another. Next thing you know, it's Christmas morning, and the kids come on out, and Daddy is passed out underneath the Christmas tree with an empty glass by his head, sitting by a half-built racetrack. Congratulations, you just ruined Christmas. Okay, to summarize then, if you're getting a slot car track for little kids for Christmas, safety is paramount. Be sure that they're not trying to put cars on the track while other cars are running. Also, be familiar with the setup, and then that way you're not wasting time on Christmas Day trying to learn how all this stuff goes, because it could take you, say, up to 3 hours if you haven't done it before. And then, of course, set them up for success and make sure the cars are running well so that they're not getting frustrated, because the last thing you want on Christmas Day is a full-blown meltdown.
My race car won't stop crashing. It's stupid. This is the worst Christmas ever.
On second thought, you might not want to get your kids a slot car track for Christmas. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if not already. We really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you at the finish line.